now we have a couple of reports that we're going to bring into the conversation, and one of which I think is incredibly damning, and that's the one from Paul Tassi that was posted moments before the show went live. I will read it verbatim, folks. It just does not look good for this game. I am already starting to see people compare it to Concord, which is not something you want to be compared to. That game came out and it's probably one of the biggest black eyes Sony Interactive Entertainment will ever have. I don't think you'll ever see them make this kind of mistake again. And this was a pretty bad one. And of course, they own Bungie. And even though it's a multi-plat, they are depending on this game, Fuzzy Belvedere, to do big dividends in the gas game market. But man, Fuzzy, let's get into this Paul Tassi article, because again, the lukewarm response started over the weekend, and that was Tom Warren. So you know what? Let's start in proper order. So Tom Warren, and I will link this story as well as Paul Tassi's, because we got to give credit where credit is due. I don't agree with both these gentlemen all the time, but I do think that they do bring a certain flair to games journalism. I definitely like Tom. I'm not saying I don't like Paul, but Paul sometimes says things, and I don't know if he's being facetious or he's just trying to rage bait people, but sometimes I think he gets it wrong. But we're going to still give credit where credit is due. Here we go. As posted by Tom Warren, this is what he had to say, ladies and gentlemen. I played enough of Marathon, and I have some brief thoughts. And these are the four positives. The gunplay is classic Bungie, and it feels great. Now, that's not surprising because Bungie makes some of the best gunplay in gaming. There is plenty of PvP if you go looking for it. The AI enemies are rather clever and well-equipped, and the inside environments look gorgeous. Now, this is where he has the negatives. He says the outside environments need some work. It often feels like I'm playing Apex Legends, an Apex Legends extraction shooter, but with a stamina system that makes movement feel clunky. The gameplay loop isn't compelling enough to make me want to play this over the other shooters that are currently available. You see, that point in itself is a real problem. So let's get into the, again, folks, this was dropped by Paul Tassi of Forbes.com. It was posted moments before we went live, and it goes on to say this: Marathon should be delayed in the wake of its closed alpha. Yikes. I'm going to read verbatim from the article, folks, so bear with me. It goes on to say this: Marathon is now on its 6th day of its closed alpha. The test featuring tens of thousands of players, with many more than that still are waiting to be let in. But even as a new code has been issued and more are coming today or later today, over this incredibly short period of time, interest has dropped dramatically. Now less than 25% of what was available on launch day was playable. The numbers falling each consecutive day, even over the weekend when those figures would normally surge. That may change with more codes issued today, but again, we've already had one wave of that, and it didn't change the game's trajectory. So this is where Paul gets a little pointed. He says, now I'm going to stop you right there. If you're about to say, well, this is an alpha, don't you know what an alpha is? But the expectations I'm seeing from this group are too high. People are mixing up what being an alpha is compared to being an alpha preview. I am even hearing people citing the GTA 6 leaks as some sort of evidence that gamers don't understand development. Generally, this is true, but if you think this is current closed alpha is comparable to a leak of a years old footage of an undeveloped game, that is not what it is. Bungie has already told us what is coming: visual polish, sandbox balancing, new gear, 2 new heroes, 1 new map. If you think there is some secret 50% of the game that Bungie isn't talking about, or that's coming at launch, I have some bad news for you. Fuzzy, look, again, I've said this openly before we even started reading Paul's article. Him and I don't agree on a lot of things. I'm not saying he's right here. I'm not saying he's wrong here. He's obviously played the game. But this is coming off the heels of Tom Warren, and this is coming off of the heels of several things that we've heard in the background. Look, I think that this game is in trouble. Just based on some of the people that I've talked to that had hands on. We're reading two different viewpoints, one from Tom and of course one from Paul, and they don't sound promising. They sound like there is a huge uphill battle to win, and I don't think they're going to win, bro. And here's the problem. Ultimately, we still don't know the final price of this game. This is a premium priced game. What does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? Is premium $50? Is premium $70? Because I don't think I would consider $40 premium. I would think $40 is half of what a game is going to cost moving forward with the Switch 2, and potentially what we could see happen at the end of the year with like a GTA 6 or even a Ghost of Yotai being the first $80 game. But premium is what the wording that Bungie used. They use that. And if you consider how important this game is for Bungie as a company, and you consider how important this game is supposed to be as a gas game for Sony, I'm here to tell you, I don't have any confidence. And I don't know. I mean, we keep hearing the comparisons to Concord, and I don't know if they're just being, trolly or there is some truth here. Fuzzy, let's try and break this down.
Okay. I'm going to start this off by stating I have not played the alpha. I submitted for a request for a key and have yet to get one. Who knows? We'll see. But all of that aside, my extraction shooter base goes to one that everybody probably knows as an extraction shooter and one that people forgot was an extraction shooter. That's The Division, and that's Escape from Tarkov. Two different games. They have some overlap and similarities, but with The Division, the key difference being you don't lose your gear that you brought into the extraction zone. You only lose what you picked up within the extraction zone. So it's a lot more approachable for a player base, and probably in the grand scheme of things would have worked out better for Marathon, but we'll get to that in a minute. When it comes to Escape from Tarkov, I think they sold somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 units or copies. Now, some of those are rebuys as far as for, banned accounts for cheating and whatnot. Some of them were gift accounts and such. Like I bought accounts for my sons as well as one for myself. And then there's the aspect of when they do a wipe, how many people hop back in. Now, with the exception of just before arenas, they were averaging something like 280 to 300,000 hopping back in. So about half the player base of what they sold would hop back in after each wipe. And typically you would see a larger number when there's a big content expansion. Like I think, I forget the name of the town now, but like Exchange. And then I think when they did the expansion on Lighthouse, those brought in a lot of players, but Arena was the big thing that brought in a lot of players. The key thing with that game, you have an option to play as a scav, which is like basically you're playing like an NPC. You get gifted random stuff that you can extract with if you don't get killed by the actual players that are trying to extract. And it's a way that you can earn money to replay some of the gear. So if you're playing terribly at it and you keep on losing, your starter gear or whatever the case may be, and you run out of money by that point, you have to play as a scav, which is like a pseudo NPC like player, thrown into the world. But once again, that's a way to kind of recoup things. They made mention that there's going to be like faction gifts, which I'm assuming like if you, whichever, runner you choose or class you choose, maybe that faction winds up donating based on your need, some weapons or some basic gear for you to go ahead and enter into the zone. But I think the big thing is this is still a niche genre, and Bungie is trying to make it mainstream, and it doesn't seem like they've made it appealing to mainstream. Now, one of the key things that, at least with uh, Escape from Tarkov, the story stays the same each and every time as far as the quests that you need to do. So for seasoned players, they already know A to B, how to unlock certain vendors, how to get access to those vendors and be able to get certain items so they can either, farm Bitcoins or other things. They already have a system of how to level themselves up to, get to the quote unquote end game or the end game level. When it comes to the average player, they're probably going to be a Timmy that gets, axed each and every time they enter the zone until, the tryhards basically, have gotten to a certain point, and then they kind of focus on other stuff at that point. But you're going to have campers at extraction points. You're going to have snipers that just want to ruin people's day, and they're going to have to figure out a way for you to, be able to bounce back, because after you lose your gear 2 or 3 times or lose the money for what you've spent in gear, you're probably not going to want to play anymore if there isn't an option to either, one, do the same to other people's, game where you kind of, make it more difficult or ruin it for them, or at least have an option to, avoid certain combat by sneaking around, getting certain items and extracting. Like, I guess the big thing is this game hasn't had enough lifespan for people to figure that out. Like, hey, I just want to go in, get this. Well, in Tarkov, you'd be going for, like, let's say a video card or something like that. This game may not have that. That's going to appeal to the masses, where it's like they know to do that mission or that quest, get the stuff, and then get the heck out of there. You hear gunfire, you go the opposite way, kind of thing. But initially with this game, I have a feeling that people are going to hear gunfire and want to run to it, and then realize, oh, wait, maybe the NPCs that are crafty can be a bit overpowered. Like in Tarkov, there is some questions on some of their bosses that roam the map, with them being aimbots, basically. If you see them first, you have a chance. If they see you first, you're already head eyes, and you're wondering why. Oh, Tequila, domed you kind of deal. But it's this genre is not for everyone. I encourage people to try it to see if it's something that you might be interested in. If the early days of the Division, before people were basically everybody going rogue kind of thing, was somewhat fun, I would say it's probably worth a try. Although not having proximity chat kind of sucks. I get it. The whole, vulgar language or toxicity and stuff like that. But proximity chat, I think, would help matters where possibly 2 teams of 3 could work together, or a bunch of solos can, pair up, because that's one of the things that a lot of people wind up doing in Tarkov. If you go in solo, sometimes a solo can outdo those 3 with a good, well-timed or well-placed grenade kind of deal. But all of that aside, I don't know what Sony's tolerance level is going to be for this game. We saw with Concord, they didn't have any patience. It didn't do the numbers that they were hoping within the first 24 to 48 hours, and they pulled the plug, within 8 days. I'm hoping they're a little bit more tolerant to give Bungie maybe a year, because as I played, vanilla Destiny when it first came out, and once I made it to a certain level, it sucked because there really wasn't much to do, and I was able to have more free time than some of my crew. So it just became a little bit boring until, I guess it was Witch Queen or something like that came out. So it's Bungie's going to probably need time to, work on things to keep it interesting, or to keep it relevant to some extent to the player base. And they're going to have to take honest feedback, because not having a single player, or I don't think they necessarily have to have a single player, but it would be something to consider. Like, just like the Division, you have the dark zone, you have what I consider the light zone, which is the PvE only area. And even if they only intertwine where you're doing like reconnaissance for the PvE area, or you're throwing health kits out for your faction or whatever over, certain walls, or delivering them to that checkpoint or something, they should really consider something that might keep people invested, where you have an alternative to get weaponry to go back in there. May not be the best of gear, but at least enough starter gear where you can probably start going in, kill some NPCs, not make a big fuss, get a couple of things for your quests, and then extract and be done. But I don't know. I kind of feel Bungie is going in this the way EA did with Anthem, and they don't want to look at shooters that did things to keep their players coming back, that might work for this game that they're doing a little bit differently. I mean, the good thing is it sounds like cosmetics carry over after wipe, which is one of the things that Tarkov doesn't do and kind of pisses me off. But, it took a while for the developer to realize that not having a single player mode to kind of get used to the maps wasn't a thing well needed, because you're not going to get a lot of new players that don't have an opportunity to at least get used to the map if they get killed within the first 2 minutes every time they come in to or queue into a match type of thing. But best of luck to Bungie. It's not sounding good. Honestly, I didn't think that this was going to do well out the gate, but I'm hopeful that Sony is patient enough to give Bungie time and doesn't pull the plug instantly like they did with Firewalk and Concord. And maybe this winds up being that first mainstream game or bigger mainstream game for extraction shooters. And they have plenty of time before Division 3 comes out, so they can get their act together before then. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe even having a mode where you keep some of your actual bots gear or the inputs or inserts or whatever, as opposed to the weapon that you brought in, or maybe you lose the shield in the weapon, but you keep some of the motorized stuff in your avatar or whatever. But yeah, I don't. It doesn't sound like this game is going to. One, it doesn't sound like it's going to set the world on fire, and two, it doesn't sound like it's going to probably have the staying power of something like an Apex Legends or Marvel Rivals or even Overwatch 2 for that matter. Even though, yes, those are totally different genres. I mean, even with Escape from Tarkov, I don't even know if they have the pull. I mean, they have the fans of Bungie and their previous work, but I don't know if they'll be able to maintain, or if it will be sufficient enough maintaining 200,000 each wipe to keep them engaged in this game. And if that's not enough players, I think they should probably cut their losses before it even releases at this point, if that's the case. But we'll see.
I think the sticking point here, look, folks, it's Bungie, right? I maybe Destiny isn't your thing. Destiny was my thing. I very much enjoyed Destiny 1. The Taken King is when they really, the rubber hit the road, so to speak, for them, and that was amazing, right? Obviously 2, only held me for the first couple of expansions. After I haven't played it in years, because there's only so many of those types of games I could play, and I was playing that and the Division at the same time. Very, very, very difficult to do. So Bungie is a talented studio, but hold on a second. Let me just add an asterisk to that. Okay, they do make some of the best shooting in gaming. That's an absolute fact. It is unbelievable how good their shooting feels. That was one of the high points on the conversation that I read to you verbatim. But here's the asterisk. Okay, a lot of that team that made Destiny 1 and 2 no longer work at the studio. And the more you start to hear about some of the things that are happening with this game, you start to wonder, is there going to be comparisons at some point to BioWare? BioWare is a shell of its former self. That's because most of the staffers from old school BioWare are gone. I think that is something to be said about who's left at Bungie. They lost a lot of they had a massive retention problem after some of the things that were going on behind the scenes came out. People left in droves. So who's making this? New developers probably. So they do have that I guess betting against them, Fuzzy. It's not the same team that made Destiny 1 and 2. Does it have some people that worked on those games? Sure. But this is also an abstraction shooter, which is an incredibly it's not the most popular of genres. It's just not. So again, we're gonna see how this all plays out. But Paul Tassi, I mean, again, I read you the headline. This game should be delayed, and I thought it was going to be delayed until next year. And then they surprised everyone, said, "No, we're ready to go." Well, that ready to go aspect makes you wonder why there are only 4 heroes to pick from. Right? There are only so many game maps. Again, this does not sound good because they use the word premium price. Now, I originally thought it was locked in at $40. Apparently, I was wrong. It's the suggested price. That's what we keep hearing. They keep saying premium price. Premium price isn't $40. Acceptable price is $40. Get into the game is $40. Premium sounds like there's a $50 version of this or a $60 version of this. If this game comes out for $60, it's gonna die day and date. That's it. No one's gonna buy this game for $60. But again, we will see what happens. Time is only gonna tell. The more that they build from the alpha into the beta, I'm not gonna play it personally. I don't do extraction shooters. Yes, I like the Division. Yes, I've spent some time in the Dark Zone. But yeah, that camping and just waiting for people to be like D's, just not my bag. You know what I'm saying? The aggravation of spending 2 or 3 hours in the Dark Zone collecting all this gear to then die 5 seconds right before the freaking helicopter's supposed to land. No, I'm not about that life. I don't have that much time in the day, so those games are definitely not for me. But I'm still excited for the new content coming to the Division. And that's single player. But we'll see. Cheese is nasty says $60. I don't know.
I've heard the same.
What's that?
I've heard the same. Like when everybody was saying 40, 2 people that are within the walls of PlayStation, one at Bungie, it's not 70, it's not 40, but that could change.
Well, I think it's going to have to change just based on the way people are talking about the game now. And I think that if they are trying to push the envelope with, quote unquote value, $60 ain't it. Sorry. That's just not going to cut the mustard. When you're going up against Apex Legends and games like Fortnite and games like Marvel Rivals that do have a free to play game, you can literally play those games for free. Will you spend money? Well, that's entirely up to you. But a lot of these kids that play Fortnite buy 1 or 2 skins, right? Maybe they buy 10 skins, but they're buying it for the skins. They're not buying the game, and that's the whole drive with those types of games. When you're going up against established franchises like Apex Legends, like Call of Duty Warzone, like Fortnite, like Marvel Rivals, which is, again, they kind of hit a little bit of a snag in season 2, but the game is still popular as F. Those are some heavy hitters in multiplayer. I don't think Marathon stands a chance, in my personal opinion, just based on what we're hearing. But we will see, folks.